Today is not only Donald Trump's inauguration, but it also marks Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a federal holiday honoring the late civil rights leader. These are live pictures of the MLK Jr. Memorial. Only once before, since it became a federal holiday, has MLK Day fallen on the same day as a presidential inauguration that happened during former President Bill Clinton's inauguration for his second term back in 1997. I spoke to MLK's son, Martin Luther King III, about all of this. We had a robust conversation. He's a human rights activist and the author of the book, What Is My Legacy? I asked him about Trump's inauguration and how the nation can move forward with civility. Take a listen.
We've elected President Trump again, and the question is, how do we navigate in civility? Because historically there has not been civility. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King went against what society was attempting to do initially and helped create the climate so that we could move forward in a constructive way. I don't think we can continue to move forward in a destructive way.
Let's drill down on how we get to being more civil and engaging, because Black Americans overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris, but you're urging them to pay close attention, to not ignore Donald Trump or the MAGA right. Why is that?
Well, number one, we can never ignore. In fact, my father talked and dialogued with every person who was president and vice president during his life. When President Eisenhower and Nixon were in office, he dialogued with them. When President Kennedy and Johnson were in office, he dialogued. When President Johnson and Vice President Humphrey, he dialogued. My point is, we have to stay engaged in conversation to talk about a direction that that our nation should go, a direction that is in the interest of all Americans, not one particular group. And I just think civility is temporarily lost, and I would like to see civility brought back to the political discourse. You can't require that unless you hold elected officials accountable. And holding them accountable is a two-way street, meaning that, again, there must be engagement. And I think that people are feeling are feeling down or feeling dejected or feeling lost. I don't think we have the luxury to believe that. Certainly you can feel it emotionally, but you got to move past that and say, look, we got to keep working on a mission of justice, of peace, of righteousness. My dad used to say, we must learn nonviolence or we may face non-existence. The climate for non-existence, we don't even need to delve down that hole. We must lift up. It really is about lifting up, creating a consciousness, creating a dignity and respect and a sensitivity. That's how we need to engage with people, even if we don't agree. And my dad showed us that, because people didn't always agree with him. But you had to engage in dignity and respect.
Before he was assassinated, some 57 years ago now in Memphis, your father said, quote, "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we as a people will get to the promised land." Are we there yet?
Absolutely not. I don't mean to be so blunt, but no, we are not even in the vicinity yet. Now, you know, he was not just talking about black people, by the way, but if we just talk about black people, the income and inequality, the wealth gap. White families have probably close to $300,000 in wealth. Black families is somewhere around $35,000, maybe even less. We got to close that gap. We should have done that by now. Back in his era, we had no known black billionaires. Now we have a minimum of 12. So again, progress has been made, but how do we increase that? How do we address the issues of economic inequality? And I must remind people, Dad wasn't killed because he was talking about sitting in a restaurant eating what we wanted to eat, or sitting in front of a bus. He was killed because he was talking about economic empowerment for more people. And when you talk about a radical redistribution of wealth, which is something that those at the time knew and understood and felt, because he's talking this way, he has to be removed. Unfortunately, that is still needed today, a redistribution of some wealth, because there's such a huge disparity. And some may say, well, people need to have the free market, which is true. But by the same token, how do we include? I mean, we live I'm in this nation, and in my city and in every city in America, we have thousands of homeless people. In a nation with a $23 to $25 trillion economy, something is wrong with that. And the answer is not just giving a man a fish. That may be a part of the answer. But when we teach people to fish, they can feed themselves and their families for a lifetime. We've got to change the climate.
Martin Luther King III, we really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.